Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here to talk to the Frontier series today on a topic that's near and dear to my heart, the role of the land-grant university in rural resilience. And I call this a Minnesota story, and throughout this talk, I'm going to actually walk you through more or less a day across Big Stone County and the role and the importance of this University of Minnesota to the people in the landscape of that area. I'm really going to work to keep this to 25 minutes, and then when I'm done, because I much prefer to answer questions than give a monologue, and just for incentives so you can think of questions, we're going to be giving out books, a couple that the partnerships have helped publish, the Winter Greenhouse Manual, and From Farm to Table, What All Americans Need to Know About Agriculture, signed copies too. So I'm going to try to keep my formal part short so that we can get into the discussion part. So let me begin by saying that I am personally a multi-generational beneficiary of the land-grant university. My grandmother attended a one-room schoolhouse in Dodge County, Minnesota. And in that one-room schoolhouse, she read the classics in Latin. And this was thanks to the teachers that she had that were educated here, and actually on the St. Paul campus in this land-grant university. I've found that there's a number of people, even graduates, alumni of this institution, that don't know what the word land-grant university means. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a brief history of what a land-grant is. Now, I'm not a historian. I am a soil scientist and a water resource scientist, so you can take my history with, the big overarching vision instead of historical accuracy. So the land-grant was established in 1862. It was put forward by Senator Justin Morrill, and he himself was the son of a blacksmith who only had 3 months of higher education. But it was the ideal that he put forward. And think about it, in 1862, while our country was in a civil war. And the ideal was that public university, public education of a higher sort should be accessible to all the people of the nation. And it should also be a part of the empowerment and a part of the democracy building. And frankly, we all are really very much beneficiaries of this system that is established in all 50 states. The word land grant comes from the funding mechanism when that act actually provided land that then each state could use to support these institutions. So really, some other historians who are more notable than my interpretations say that the land grant is a glorious American innovation like nothing else in the world. And that really, again, that it's the union of these two things about empowerment and access and being an inclusive place. This slide in particular, I got this from NDSU, but it was also set up to be both a practical and liberal education, so that in addition to learning skills like blacksmith, you also learned to read the classics in Latin. I'm the statewide director of a program. It's called the University of Minnesota Regional Sustainable Development Partnerships, and it is really the embodiment of this land-grant ideal. In fact, our board members and the people we work with know what a land-grant is, and they talk about this ideal as being something very ennobling, and that binds them very closely to their University of Minnesota. The regional partnerships were formed by the Minnesota legislature in 1997, so there's something of a more modern incarnation of the land-grant. And since 2007, we have been part of University of Minnesota Extension, which is a very good home for our work and our program. We are located throughout greater Minnesota. That's the part of the state that we were tasked with serving. And we have 5 regional partnerships. Each has its own citizen and faculty board. We work together to identify community needs and bring together both community and faculty and staff of the university to address those needs. And we work in the areas of sustainable agriculture and local foods, clean energy with our clean energy resource teams, which we call CERTs, with sustainable tourism, and natural resource. So those are our 4 focus areas. Today I'm going to give this talk in honor of a woman named Mary Page. Mary Page is a former regent of the University of Minnesota, and she was a West Central Regional Partnership Board member for many years, as well as being the chair of the statewide board of the regional partnerships. Mary is a very special person, and she really imprinted on me when I came into this job. And there's 3 things that I want to point out that Mary taught to me. Number 1, the very first time I was in this job, barely a few days, and I called my very first staff meeting, and we went up to Brainerd because our staff are located all around the state. And I was asked, well, who should come? And I said, well, it's a staff meeting, we'll have staff. So we all gathered there, and as the meeting was starting, in walked Mary Page, our executive committee, our citizen board member, and she said, you don't hold regional partnership meetings without having citizen board members. And I can say in the 8 years I've had this job, I've only had 1 staff and executive committee phone call where there hasn't been a citizen board member as part of our work. So if you came into one of our meetings, you might not be able to tell who was staff and who was board, because it's that kind of a culture. So that was the first lesson Mary taught me. The second lesson is that even though she was a U of M regent, she said that sitting on the regional partnership board for all those years really taught her the value of the scientific method, what a public research university means, what it can mean to the landscape, what it can mean to the rural communities. Mary Page has lived in Olivia, Minnesota, was a Renville County Commissioner. So she's really speaking from a great deal of experience, and that this connection with this program is what really helped her realize how important the scientific method can be. The third thing that Mary taught me is that she told me this story, that she was sitting at a meeting on the Twin Cities campus and meeting with faculty and staff, and it was a very intense conversation about how we're going to deal with all these issues of growth, you know, we're eating up farmland, and how are we going to handle all these environmental impacts. And she said, time out. In rural Minnesota, we're trying to stave off the grief of the loss of population. So all this intensity around this issue of growth, we're trying to deal with just the opposite thing a few miles out. And it was a couple of years after that my husband, Mike Jorgensen, and I made a decision to move to Big Stone County, Minnesota. Now maybe you can recognize where Big Stone County is by this landscape feature right here. So it's all the way on the western side of the state. It's that bump, the elbow in the state, back of the state of Minnesota. That's a natural boundary. That's Big Stone Lake. It's the headwaters of the Minnesota River. It's 200 miles from my office in Borlaug Hall to the front door of my farmhouse where I live. And I got to experience firsthand what that grief, what that loss, what that change that's happening on the rural landscape looks like. It's become a part of my life. And the reason that we moved there is because we had bright dreams and hopes that we were going to be able to walk the talk, that we were going to be able to do sustainable agriculture and renewable energy, that we were going to be able to help restore the environment, to be a carbon sink, to be a part of a really vibrant, healthy local foods movement and a community food system that took care of the people. And we wanted to be kind of, I don't mean to be overly dramatic, but we wanted to be on the front line of that rural revitalization as being part of the people who stood up to still maintain a presence on our rural landscape. This is the farmstead next to mine on the same section that I live on. It's a monument to a family farm that is no longer there. And I will say that on our section, I live in a 36-mile township. And in the wintertime, I'll say there's probably about 50 of us who live in that 36-square mile area. And I wish I could say this is the only such monument, but there's another one that's just kitty corner from our farm that represents a rural church that was there and has since gone away. We were really impacted by the farm crisis of the 80s. So over the last 30 years, we've lost 50% of the population base in Big Stone County. With the consolidation of farms and the loss of associated industries that supported those farms, we've really seen a decline in the number of farmers and the number of people in our county, which causes consolidation of schools and a number of issues. This is the farm that's just out my back door to the east, and also doesn't have a farmer on it any longer. In addition to the loss of population, we're also seeing some decaying of our infrastructure. So this is one of the buildings, an anchor building on our main street in Ortonville, Minnesota, which is our county seat. And in June 2013, this building collapsed. Along with it, we lost part of the 8 businesses that were in that building. I think only probably about 4 of them have reopened up. The rest of them just called it a day. And you know, one of the happy stories is that in this building we had a Whole Foods co-op. And that has found another place on Main Street and is revived and revitalized. And so it's not all loss. And I will also say that we collected some of these bricks that fell, and we're going to be using those to repurpose on another building. It'll be a front of another building that's going up on Main Street. So, you know, doing the best to use our infrastructure as we can. But here's the story I want to tell you today. So I'm going to take you on a bus trip across Big Stone County. We're going to start on the western edge, right on the South Dakota border, on the shore of Big Stone Lake, and we're going to travel to the eastern side of the county. This is an actual tour we had about 3 weeks ago. It is a group of people that was organized by farmer Noreen Thomas. Noreen farms near Moorhead, Fargo-Moorhead, Minnesota. She also is a Citizen Advisory Committee member for University of Minnesota Extension. And Noreen put up these flyers at a co-op in Fargo and had 30 people who wanted to get on a bus and come to Big Stone County. And when we told people that there was 30 people coming to Big Stone County from Fargo, I mean, literally it was like jaw-dropping. Why? Because Fargo is our regional center. The roads go one way. We go to Fargo for medicine or for medical reasons or for shopping. So it was very exciting to have this group of people come to Big Stone County. We started our tour on the shores of Big Stone Lake at the Big Stone Apple Ranch. This is the last remaining apple orchard, commercial apple orchard, on the shore of Big Stone Lake. There used to be a number of these orchards. The apples that are back here, those are from the Big Stone Apple Ranch. So help yourself, all kinds of varieties. And you can see the prairie rising up from behind the apple orchard, which is the natural landscape. And what we tell ourselves in Big Stone County is that we have the perfect microclimate for growing apples, right along this lake shore, protected by this upland prairie that goes along the lake. This is Betty Johnson. She owns the Apple Ranch. And as we were sitting there, the 30 of us sitting on apple crates in the shed, Betty said, I grow apples here. I grow 9 varieties of apples. They're from the University of Minnesota. Unscripted, unasked for. She was proud, and she could tell you the history. She could even tell you some of the names of people who developed those apples through the years. And there's one other thing that impacts our county on a day-to-day basis, and that is 4-H. This is a University of Minnesota program. I don't know if you are aware, but in every of the 87 counties in Minnesota, there's a University of Minnesota office with professional staff in it. And those are University of Minnesota Extension offices. We have professional people throughout this entire state. 4-H is one really important part of our infrastructure in rural places. This is a really tremendous opportunity for the children statewide. And on this particular day, we were doing a service project at Big Stone Apple Ranch because Betty was having trouble getting all the apples in. Sometimes there's issues with labor and finding people who can do the work with our lower level of population. And so we actually had the 4-H club spend a day volunteering to pick apples for the Apple Ranch. Then I'm going to give you one other example of a Big Stone County project, And this project was actually done in collaboration with the Center for Urban and Regional Affairs, their Community Assistant Program, CURA-CAP. This is graduate student Megan Mathey. She's a horticultural grad student, and she worked with the Big Stone County Food Shelf and did a project in northern Big Stone County, which is where our tour bus is going. And the project was a community food security project. This is an area with high free and reduced lunch, and it's considered a USDA designated rural food desert. And what we did was planted 180 apple trees at the home of every child, kindergarten through 6th grade. So that was the strategy to help build community food security, is to give each child the means to grow their own fruit. In this case, it was apples. And on this Saturday, this is the Men's Service Club. All farmers, all who should have been in the field planting their crops, they spent the day planting these trees at the home of every child. And can you imagine for a graduate student to have that kind of a generational impact with those apple trees and what that's going to mean to those families as the years go by? Now we're going to take a little detour out of Big Stone County and come back here to the St. Paul campus. This is Byron Hansen. He is the head of the bakery and deli for Lunds and Byerly's, and this is Aaron Meyer, our Southeast Regional Partnership Executive Director. I just want to highlight this one regional partnership project, partly because we're going to be eating this pie when we get to the reception. But a few years ago, a group of apple growers in southeast Minnesota approached the Southeast Regional Partnership, and they had a problem, which was they didn't have any outlet for their seconds. So there's Haralson apples back there on this table, and these are the kind that you can pick and put right on the shelf. But the seconds are a quality apple, but they have some blemish. And so the regional partnerships helped build a team, a multidisciplinary team. It included the Carlson School of Management, the Food Science and Nutrition Department, and IT. And they brought this team together, and they brought this combined power of the university, and they came up with a product. It is an apple pie filling, and that product went on to be, and is today, the signature pie at Lunds and Byerly's, the Haralson apple pie that you can get at Lunds and Byerly's. And Byron came into our meeting here on campus in May, and he said, thanks to this project, this was really what really spurred, that's their #1 selling product. It really spurred their bakery enterprises. Because of that, they built a facility just for doing bakery. And I think he said they have like 18 full-time people as a result of that. And good paying jobs, he also emphasized. So that's just one example of how the partnerships can help really bring together this combined power of the university to solve a real problem that was brought to us by farmers. So we're getting back on the bus. We're heading down a little bit farther east in Big Stone County, and this is a grape vineyard. It is just an absolute treasure in the middle of our county. It is an organic vineyard, which is also very rare because it's difficult to grow grapes organically. And it's run by Danny Moberg and his wife Michelle Moberg and their children. And it's 7 acres of grapes. And as we got off the bus, and as we were all very eager to go and pick grapes and eat grapes, because they are so delicious, Danny said to us, I grow 3 varieties of grapes in this vineyard, and they're all from the University of Minnesota. And again, unscripted, not asked for, but crediting really the university. And these grapes have only been released, I believe, in the last decade or so. So this is a relatively new crop, and now we're really just starting to see these grapes come to fruition. About the same time that Danny was planting those grapes on his farm, without much support and just because he has a can-do farmer innovative attitude, the regional partnership saw a need to build a network among the grape growers of the upper Minnesota River Valley. And so at that time, Dr. Jim Luby was serving on our West Central board. It's now the Southwest board. But so we had our Citizen University board included the professor who really has been instrumental in overseeing the development of some of these varieties. And But we realized, in addition to the university capacity and bringing the grapes out and creating the varieties, we needed to build the community capacity as well. So we worked with, this is Audrey Arner. She actually farms in Moonstone Farms. I think someone was over there last weekend. And Audrey helped us to organize the wine growers of the upper Minnesota River Valley. And so that the farmers could, those people could share with each other, but they could also help access resources at the university. So one other story I'm going to tell you about the grapes is at this same time when the grapes are being planted and we're trying to organize the growers, we were approached by one of our board members who said, we need to see and make a case for the economic impact that grapes and the wine industry can have in Minnesota. And he approached the partnerships, and he brought the Minnesota Grape Growers Association with him. And the partnerships then worked together as a group. So this was a multi-regional effort. A number of our regional partnerships came together around this issue. And we came back into the university, and we met with Professor Bill Gartner. And we basically commissioned and did the very first economic analysis of the grape industry in Minnesota. And I asked Bill last week what he thought and how, what impact the partnerships work had. And he basically said that without the impetus, without the nudge, without the support of the partnerships, that he doesn't think that you would be doing grape impact analysis today. And he's gone on to work with 12 states, and he says impacted thousands of growers, and he really benefited, he really claims that the partnerships were absolutely instrumental in seeding that work, and it has a strong and ongoing legacy today. So that's part of the role that the partnerships are playing too. And in addition to all that, we also drink the wine. So So the week before last, the regional partnerships and Olive Extension was in Duluth for the fall program. And we all had dinner at the Minnesota Wine Exchange. It's on Superior Street in Duluth. If you're in Duluth, you just got to check this place out. You can order any of dozens of different kinds of Minnesota wines. So look at the impact that this has had over this time. So now we're getting back on the bus, and we're going to the last stop of the day. And this is actually my farm. So we have a 320-acre farm in eastern Big Stone County that we have some organic production, grass-fed beef, produce electricity with a wind turbine. And there's some budding research on growing organic heirloom edible dry beans, and also some organic market classes of beans. So we're looking at black turtle beans, kidney beans, navy beans, pinto beans, but also some of the more rare heirloom varieties. And so on this particular day, we had two grad students, Claire Flavin and Hannah Swaygarden, who were there actually harvesting part of their field experiment, and were able to talk to this group, and they, very excited about talking about the potential for heirloom and organic edible beans. And so over the course of the day, we went from the apple orchard, where they're growing varieties that were developed in 1920s, to the grapes, which are just on the, just now coming to full fruition on our landscape, to what is the future, what other crops, and how the University of Minnesota is actually out there on the landscape, helping to look at what might be some future crops that have a lot of benefit. Edible beans have all kinds of human health, environmental, soil, beneficial properties. So I'm trying to keep to 25 minutes. So I'm just going to stop here in this cafe that's on Main Street, Clinton. And on October 15th, we had a community meeting here that was really facilitated and really taken care of by the University of Minnesota Extension. And this was on sustainable tourism. So the partnerships are tasked with, that's one of our mandates, is to do sustainable tourism. So earlier this year, we did a call for proposals to do sustainable tourism in towns and areas with population's less than 1,500. Really look at some of those places that don't see themselves as being tourism, but maybe have lots of potential if they were just be open to it. And so we had our community meeting here. That's Neil Linscheid, who formerly grew up here in the Twin Cities, but has decided that he wanted to work in greater Minnesota, so he's officed out of southwestern Minnesota. And there's actually one little other story. This is a community commercial kitchen. So it's part of this infrastructure that's closed down. The restaurant went out of business. They closed the doors. And this is another of these Cura Cap programs. And we had over the summer a graduate student who came and worked with us because it is a licensed commercial kitchen that we are making available to any producers in Big Stone County that want to come in and you want to bring your apples. We actually have someone making hard apple cider. We've got someone, the grapes are going in. We can use those we actually have some organic wine that's fermenting in the back. We have someone else who's creating maple syrup products because he harvested maple syrup. And so, but the graduate student was looking at what are the regulatory issues with a community commercial kitchen. And you'd be amazed at how complex it is. But that's another one of there's another example how the university is really it's touching this landscape in so many ways, in so many places, and really enabling us to do the work that communities see as our important needed next step. This is our needed next step in scaling up local foods. And this is how the university is helping us realize that vision. So over the course of the night, we did the SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and things that we thought were maybe disadvantages. We don't have a lot of people, but our night skies are the envy of astronomers everywhere. They really are. And we have lots of waterfowl. This is one of the major stepping stones for migratory waterfowl across North America. We have local foods. We have cheesemakers, winemakers, apple orchards, and we have wind. So one of the tables at the end of the night, they jumped up and they were like, we need a kite festival. We got to do something with our wind. So they were very enthusiastic that we should have a kite festival. And so getting back to that issue of wind, I think we're all familiar with this iconic University of Minnesota picture. This is the University of Minnesota, the Research and Outreach Center at Morris, the wind turbine that was installed there. And that wind turbine is not commonly known. It's not widely known. But this was an early project of the regional partnerships and that West Central partnership again, where, and I asked Greg Cuomo, who is the division head for CFANS, like, did the partnerships play a role? What would you say the role was? And he said that, now there's just tremendous excitement about the renewable energy work that's being done, how they're going to start creating anhydrous ammonia from wind, air, and water without any carbon. That's just a tremendous technological innovation. And they really are looking at how this benefits rural economies. So they keep that in the forefront of their mind as they're developing this technology. And he said, before there was any of this infrastructure, before that existed, before there was anything other than an idea, the West Central Regional Partnership stepped up and provided some of that support that was needed to turn that from an idea into reality. So kind of that first, here's your crazy idea, we'll give it a little traction. And so that is actually, this will be my last slide. But I want to say that, one of the terms that we're using in the partnerships now is like we're local in many places. So like with this wind, we've done a number of different aspects and facets of the wind because every part of our state maybe will be interested in this to a certain extent, but there's different needs. And so we're really able to replicate and to build upon each other's works and really kind of looking at how we can respond and adapt. And part of that is our clean energy resource teams too, which really embodies that spirit of what does the community need, shining the light, showing folks who else is doing what, bringing people together, the environmentalist with the utility person. So just with that, I say, I hope that this little tour of Big Stone County has given you a sense of like the really significant impact that this university has on rural places and the tremendous amount of good that it does, and that you're all proud, you yourselves are all, I'm guessing, representatives and staff and students of this institution and its fine history. And as you orient your work, you know, keep in mind that we have an opportunity to showcase Minnesota and how we can help local thrive and survive, and then we can teach that elsewhere, even globally, on how we can really do local. So with that, I would like to take your questions.